Boom, 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 boom. A side, B side. What side are you on? I think that was great. That was really good. That was good. That was just off the cuff.
Okay.
Like I think that was some good stuff.
Have you ever thought to yourself, man, I sure would like to make a podcast. I've got so much to say about blank. Well, if you haven't heard about Anchor, you really should. It is the easiest way to make a podcast, and it's absolutely free. All right, I'm going to tell you why it's so easy. Okay, so with Anchor, there's creation tools that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many others. And you can even make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Trust me, I'm so excited about this. You can be too. Download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started.
All right. Maybe we will hire someone to do the theme song.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, I feel like we laid down like a pretty high bar, but if somebody wants to surpass that with a theme song, then they absolutely can and submit that, and it will go under consideration. But I feel like A side, B side, what side are you on? Is pretty. It's got some funk. It's got a little bit of R&B. I feel like it calls back to Prince from here, my homeland in Minnesota. So, I mean,
you brought out the big guy.
It's a high bar to pass, but I feel like, if somebody wants to take a shot at the king, come on.
Oh, that is a high bar. All right. So how was your week? I tried not to bother you so much this week because I know how I get when I get excited and I'm like, hey, I've got this idea. I've got this idea. I've got this idea. I've got this idea. Plus, I knew you were camping.
Yeah.
So how did that go?
It surprisingly well for a city boy like myself. And when I say camping, there's not like a tent involved. We were staying in an RV, so it had AC and like running water and stuff. So like
that's my kind of.
It is a very easy version of camping. However, it's still like we had a storm one night that was really, really loud because I don't know if you know much about RVs because I don't, but evidently they are not well insulated and it's basically like a tin roof. So this was a full-on thunderstorm that felt like the entire like Lord of the Dance concert was happening on our roof. It was like Michael Flatley just tap dancing for 5 hours on top of our roof. So we didn't sleep a whole lot. But then we just turned the AC on really loud and pretended things weren't happening, as you do as a white person in middle America. So that helped a little, but it was still a little bit of an adjustment.
See, I always hear like camping in the rain is so wonderful.
I mean,
I guess
maybe
not.
like
they laugh.
Yeah, like maybe like a gentle rain. Like that would be soothing, but this was like an aggressive, angry. So there was this big storm cell that literally was from mid Minnesota through Wisconsin all the way down to mid Missouri. It was just massive. They called it like the Midwestern hurricane, but not a hurricane. It was scary and big and like had all this hail and storms, and it like just kind of scared the living daylights out of the Midwest, which is, I mean, we don't have a lot of daylights left, so we don't want to lose any. But it was a big storm, and so it was a bit of a adjustment. And I don't sleep well, and my two lovely children are my children, so they don't sleep exceptionally well either. So the first night, it was like everybody sleeps for an hour, then we like all wake up and talk for a bit, and then we sleep for 2 hours, then we all wake up and talk for 2 hours. So it was kind of like having like a sleepover, but in the middle of that, having like this storm that sounds like the world is ending. And so we couldn't talk during that. We just would like make weird facial expressions and then find out later
just
that
kind of stare at each other.
We didn't have any idea what anyone else was talking about, but we understood each other so much better.
So I didn't do anything nearly that cool. I took my youngest back to school, which has been
that's big.
An adventure.
Yeah.
It's an especially big adventure during all of this coronavirus pandemic blah.
Yeah. So
So
I mean, not to full disclose on the internet your family's current status with schooling, but are they back in person?
they are back in person. So I guess the way they are doing it, and I guess this is the way a bunch of schools are doing it, is like somehow they have split the classes. I think it's alphabetically. And on one day, let's say that the first half of the alphabet is in class and the second half is online, and then they flip it.
For my two, who are both, one's in 8th grade, one will be in 10th grade. The 10th grader is having like a hybrid thing because she goes to a arts high school. So obviously the arts classes are a little bit more hands-on, and it helps to have people. So they're going to be in person for those 1 week, and then all the academic classes will be online. And then next week they will switch, which is going to be very confusing as a parent, because I'm not going to have any idea if I'm supposed to take the kid to school or if I'm not supposed to take them to school. Because 1 week it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The next week is Tuesday, Thursday. And the next week is Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And the next week is Tuesday, Thursday. So that's going to be an adjustment for me. The middle schooler, the school is not doing anything in person, which
at all
right now. I mean, they're waiting here in Minnesota. The governor left it up to the districts, and the districts then worked with their school boards and their counties to like look at the infection rate and what is possible. And his school also did an entire, like, really pushed and asked for feedback from parents, and 70% of the people that responded said, let's do distance learning first and then reevaluate after the first quarter.
Yeah.
So everything's going to be distance learning, but I think it's a little bit easier for them because Minnesota's had, St. Paul and Minneapolis have had distance learning as an option with giving every kid either a Chromebook or an iPad for a couple of years now. So that makes the possibility of distance learning a little bit more plausible, but not, I mean, not everybody's going to have internet access like they should. And that's always going to be a problem, but at least the device is provided by the school district. So that helps a little bit, but I really hope they can get back to some sort of in-person school. Cause he's going in 8th grade, and honestly, 8th grade probably was like the 3rd best year of my life.
I mean, they made a movie about 8th grade, so it's got to be pretty important.
Well, yeah, and like I wasn't in a middle school. I was in a K through 8th grade private school. So 8th grade, you're basically like the seniors of the school. You're like the kings of the roost, and everybody wants to like know what you know, and like you're like, I'm about to graduate and go on to high school. I'm pretty cool, and that was a great year, but it was mostly because of the social interaction. I don't feel like it would be the same if I had to do everything distance learning. So I understand why we're doing it. This is a weird time. This is a pandemic that I, as someone who only took 2 years of high school science, doesn't really understand. But I hope that we can figure something out where we can get back to having some of the social options for these kids who are not going to have these opportunities again. Like, my son's never going to have another 8th grade year. My daughter's never going to have another 10th grade year. We're doing what we have to because of the, outbreak, but hopefully penicillin was found by accident. So it is entirely plausible that some dude or dudette or lady or madam or sir or miss could determine or find out the coronavirus vaccine by accident. Because that's usually how science happens. It's like you're trying to do one thing and you discover something else. So fingers crossed that happens sooner rather than later. Also, I don't get to go. I don't get to chaperone any field trips if we don't go anywhere. Which that's one of the
bummed about that?
That's one of the things I'm decent at is chaperoning field trips, because I treat it like we're on like an action movie set, and this is my squad of soldiers, and I give them very specific instructions like everybody stay together, hands held. Here's our signals. If you separate, you got to look for here. And it usually works really well, because if you give them like 4 or 5 instructions that are very obvious, like don't get eaten by the lion, they're probably going to listen.
I would hope they would listen to don't get eaten by the lion.
Yeah, but they didn't think they were going to get eaten. But as soon as you mention it's a possibility, now they're on guard.
All right. So as I was saying.
Sorry, was that minutia?
No minutia, Adam. Okay. So as I was saying, I took the youngest back to school, and the oldest already has her own life and her own world. So whatever, she's kind of like, whatever, mom. But then I came back to an empty house where I had where I'd had constant 24/7 company for 5 months. So that's I've been trying to adjust to that.
I mean, you still got the dog.
Two dogs.
Two
Yes,
dogs.
I do have them.
Yeah.
And they are both sitting under me. Well, one's on the couch and one's sitting directly under me at the moment.
So you're not completely alone.
No, but they don't sing loudly in the shower and wake me up at 2:00 in the morning to just randomly have a conversation. And if they did, I'd be worried.
I mean, I could see the dog just like howling the song of his people, like "Arr!" in the shower. That would make sense. My dog wakes me up at like 2 a.m. because she saw something and she wants me to go look at it. And I'm like, you didn't see anything. It was a shadow. And then we have a 45-minute conversation about what shadows are, which is basically just me talking to myself. So probably not the dog. That's just my neurosis.
And she's just looking at you like, yeah, whatever it is.
She's like, are we going to go outside or not?
Because if we're not, stop talking to me.
Please stop talking.
All right, so let me see. This week, I think I start this week.
You do.
And okay, I always say this. I know this. Maybe I should put this on a t-shirt. It's a wild one, but it is really a wild one. Like this story, the postage stamp and the power of DNA. That's what I'm calling it.
Okay. Very
right,
apropos
so-
since the post service is under attack right now. So,
Well, this story actually takes place in Italy. I don't know how their postage service is doing, but we're going to assume they're doing okay.
fair.
And it's set in 2010.
Okay.
Unfortunately, because it's true crime. Oh, you know what? Let me back up. I forgot to tell you while I was at home, wallowing in my aloneness, I did watch a couple of really cool shows that I would highly recommend.
Okay.
On HBO, Perry Mason. It is not your old school Raymond Burr Perry Mason.
Wait, I'm
That's
sorry.
the one.
There's a new Perry Mason?
Yeah, it's Matthew Rice, the guy that was in A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood with Tom Hanks.
I don't know about this.
It's very dark.
It's dark?
It's very
Perry
dark.
Mason is not dark.
Well, it is now.
I don't know about that.
It's actually pretty decent. I think, it took me like the first episode because I had actually heard on a podcast that I absolutely love, My Favorite Murder. They were talking about it and I was like, okay, well, let me give it a shot. And, the first episode I was like, blah. But then afterwards I got into it. But it is a very dark take.
Well, and dark remakes, and I know, no minutia, Adam, but this is going to come up in my section, so I'm just going to preview it right now. Have you heard about the new Fresh Prince of Bel-Air remake?
Yes, the dark, gritty drama remake that they're shopping around. Yes.
So evidently that's the thing now. It's like we make Perry Mason dark. Like evidently we're making Fresh Prince of Bel-Air dark. But I mean, like that one is really weird. Like this dude just made a fan video and Will Smith saw it and said, "Hey, let's talk."
And apparently they've been shopping it for about a year.
Yeah.
And like HBO is interested, which that kind of makes the most sense since HBO is the one that has Fresh Prince of Bel-Air right now. But Hulu, I believe Netflix, they're all kind of in a bidding war for it.
And quite frankly, like I'm going to like, I know this. And I had a friend mention this to me that I often say we could do an entire show on this, but we could do an entire show on how Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was like, it was a comedy, but it tackled a lot of big topics.
Yeah, it did.
And like, it wasn't like this just happy-go-lucky thing all the time. I mean, it had some really poignant and dramatic moments. So having like
one of which is like the one episode where his dad comes back and then he leaves. I mean, and that behind the scenes, that was a one take deal because it was so close to home for Will Smith.
I mean, and they tackled all sorts of stuff. And like, I mean, it feels like, oh, well, we all think of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air as this like funny thing and like Carlton dances around and but like that was back in the day when sitcoms kind of under the guise of comedy were able to take on things that probably dramas weren't willing to take on.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was no drama show talking about absentee fathers at that time, like in mid-90s. Like that wasn't a thing that really happened. Instead we got like My Two Dads, where like, oh, you don't have one dad, you have two dads that both love you. I mean, because they both loved your mom. That was a very weird thing.
Yeah.
Talk about unrealistic.
Oh, stop. Another show that I have been watching that I like Quibi. I don't know if you've ever given Quibi a shot. It's short form programming.
Mm-hmm.
And so each episode, they have movies and TV shows. I don't really know how to figure out how they classify each one because
It's all short. It's all episodic.
and
Yeah.
it's all episodic and everything it ranges from 5 minutes to 10 minutes. So, and every episode is a different length, but they just like, I mean, once it's over, you're like, that was only 9 minutes. Like they pack some serious wallops into these episodes. But I've been watching The Fugitive, which is an updated retelling of course, the old school Tommy Lee Jones Fugitive,
Which was an updated retelling of the old school like 60s
right
series,
But this version, he's not. The premise is, and I'm not really giving anything away because it's the very first episode. The premise is not anything to do with his wife.
Yeah.
The premise is like a terror attack.
Okay. And of course,
And so
I mean, and playing into that terror attack thing, who plays the cop that's hunting him down?
it is Kiefer Sutherland.
Right. Of 24 fame.
Uh-huh.
Going back
And-
to our old show when I was supposed to do recaps of the season 24, but I kept falling asleep.
Oh yeah. But Kiefer Sutherland does a really good job of being the guy that you want to punch in the face because
Oh, yeah.
he's I mean, like Tommy Lee Jones, but like level 1,000.
Well, I mean, he's basically his character from 24 crossed with his character from Designated Survivor.
I didn't see either one of those.
Well, okay. Well, trust me, he's sort of a badass, but he's also like trapped in this world of rules and dichotomy, and he gets very frustrated. And yeah, so it's those two characters together.
Have you seen The Fugitive on Quibi?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you don't tell me what happens in the episode that was released today because I have not seen it.
I've not
yet.
watched that
I'm
one
still...
yet. I really like Dangerous Game. I really like the
Dangerous Game was amazing.
what was the one with
Survive was really good.
the one where it's the couple that wants to become like a home decorator show.
Oh, something flipped out.
Yeah, flipped out or something. It was very over the top, but that one was well done as well.
There's another one where a girl gets in the very first episode. She gets in like it's not really an Uber, but it's supposed to be an Uber.
Yeah.
And then it's a whole wild adventure. I mean, man, Quibi, first of all, they're bringing in some heat and some firepower with these celebrities.
They spent a lot of money. And I think the biggest issue that happened was they were designed to be bite-sized viewing. So like, when you're on the bus or you're walking to the train, or you're sitting in your office, you got 5 minutes, you can watch an episode. That's the entire idea. And then they launched when everyone just wants to watch 13 hours of something because they don't have anything else to do.
Yeah.
So it's just like the timing was not great.
I'm going to say though, 100%, I recommend Quibi. There's another one.
Is it Quibi or Quibi?
Pretty sure it's Quibi.
I don't know. I've never heard it said out loud, so I'm going like in my brain. It was always.
I think I looked up the pronunciation before.
All right. Well, I will trust you because in my brain it was always Quibi. But this is like when you read a book and then like you hear the audiobook or the movie version and they pronounce a character's name and you're like, oh, I was way off.
Yeah, I just looked it up again. It's Quibi.
Quibi. Okay.
Yeah, it's short for Quick Bites. Quibi.
Oh, that makes more sense. Because when I said it was QB, it would just be like cube biting. That's not as good a name.
That's not as. Also, real quick, another one on Netflix that I absolutely love, and this one's not action or anything like that. It's just a very sweet show. It's called Love on the Spectrum.
I have heard. I need to look that up.
It's just so. Like you fall in love with these people, and it's a docu-series. It's filmed in Australia, and everyone on the series is on the spectrum, and they want to date or they are dating. They're figuring out how to date, and they are so sweet and so pure, and like you just watch it and you feel so good because there's no pretense. They're not gonna lie about anything. They're not trying to benefit in some way by saying this. They're going to gain this. They have no gain. The only thing they want is to find somebody to date.
So it sounds like it's the dating show that we all wish dating shows were, because dating shows are always about like manipulation and posturing and hooking up
Hooking
and
up.
like setting myself up for the sequel or my career down the road, whereas this might just actually be about meeting somebody.
No, it is. It's not might. It is 100%. They are all about, they just want to meet somebody. And it's just the sweetest. And watching them on dates. I mean, I hope there's another season because I need to know like what happens with all of them.
One of my big quarantine guilty pleasures was Love is Blind. And I watched it virtually with one of my friends, and we would like text each other the entire time. But that show, by the end, you can totally tell that maybe two couples were actually trying to find somebody. Everybody else was in it to be on TV or to create a career or be famous. And I think we're just so used to that. Like, we expect that now.
I knew the minute Cameron started talking to Lauren and he tossed aside his notebook, I said, he's done. He's hooked.
Like, I think they are the only, and this just became a Love is Blind podcast. That's fine. But I think Cameron and Lauren are the ones that are obviously most likely to work.
Well, I mean, they've been together 2 years now.
Yeah. But I'm going to forget the names, but the dude that had two girls that were super into him, who's an engineer, Amber and Barrett. Yeah. That one seems weird, but I think it will work because of its weirdness.
I think it will work because he's terrified.
Well, he's terrified of her.
Because she's crazy.
I think, like, legit, I think she was couch surfing before the show started. Like, I don't think she
said
she said I was staying with some friends. But, like, she had not out and out admitted, like, I didn't have a place to live because she was between jobs and between boyfriends. And one of those two things always gave her a home.
Well, she found what she was looking for. I mean, I follow them all on Instagram and they seem very happy and they post cutesy little pictures. And, again, it's been 2 years because it was a year and a half before we even watched it. I know. So for a year and a half, they had to keep that a secret.
Tell me when they get to 5.
All right. Okay. So this week, like I always say, I got a wild one for you. So it takes place in Italy in 2010.
Okay.
It is the story of Yara Now, I have practiced this name for like 2 weeks because I've had the story lined up, and now I feel like I'm going to say it wrong, but it's Yara Gambarasio. Young Yara, she's 13 years old, and she was from a very small town near Bergamo called Brambate de Spora. I hope I said that right.
All of our listeners from Italy can send messages. Yeah.
Please correct me if you are from Italy or Italian and you know how to say it and I've said it wrong. Forgive me. So it's a really small, quiet town, like not a whole lot of crime. They really say nothing really ever happens here. Little Yara, I say little because she was 13 and I feel like that's such a baby, but she was really passionate about gymnastics. So she left home and she went to the gym. She was supposed to be dropping off a stereo. Some reports say she got a quick training session in and then she was supposed to be home. She lived extremely close to the gym. So it was November 26th when she went. She left her house at 5:45. She lived less than a half a mile. 700 meters from her house was the gym, which is less than a half a mile. When she wasn't home, she was supposed to leave the gym by like 6. Half a mile. It's not going to take you long to get there and back. So when she wasn't home by like 7 o'clock or 7:30, her family's like, okay, something is not right. They're calling her phone. She's not answering, which is unusual. Teenage kids have their phone on them all the time. Literally, it's like
I spent 2.5 days with mine, and the phone was usually very close to theirs. Actually, to be fair, mine was closer to me than theirs was, which was probably an indictment of me. But anyway.
So when she wasn't home by 7:30 that night, now, mind you, it's November 26th. So I'm not sure how the seasons work there, but she had on like a jacket and things like that. So I'm assuming it was a
Right.
little bit chillier. You know, I don't know if November in Italy is
Yeah,
like
I mean
November
it's
here.
it's Mediterranean, so you have to think it's a little bit more mild because they're closer to the equator. But then again, I've just used all of my geology knowledge and geometry knowledge and geographic knowledge all at once.
All of it, all of it. So 7:30, she's not home. They call the police. There's a massive search. They can't find her. Well, the police went ahead and they started placing wiretaps on phones. This is a whole different system. I know you're like, wait,
Yeah.
wiretaps, that's
Yeah,
illegal.
not there. They went
not
for it.
there.
They were like, anybody she might talk to.
So 2 weeks after her disappearance, a guy named Mohammed Fikri, he was of Moroccan descent. He was there as a builder. Well, Mohammed was arrested in connection with the case. When they tapped his phone, they kind of misheard a conversation. Muhammad was having a conversation about Yara, and what he said was, "Forgive me, God, I didn't kill her."
Boy.
But it was mistranslated initially. So he was arrested. And of course, let's just be realistic. He's a foreigner in a very small town. He's going to stand out. So they were watching him anyway. And then when they intercepted that phone call and they misinterpreted, of course, he
So
became
they interpreted
prime suspect.
as he said, I did kill her?
Basically, like, he was saying, I guess that's why they thought he was
Gotcha.
saying, "Forgive me, God."
Gotcha.
Like, I killed her. But he didn't. He was not. That's not even what he was saying. Well, Muhammad actually had a van for his job. And when they searched his van, they found bloodstained mattresses. Well, they tested the blood. They found that it was not related to Yara or any case. Don't ask, because it doesn't matter. It was not related to the case. So Muhammad, after being held for several weeks, he was released because it became clear, okay, this is not our guy. Well, on February 25th of 2011, so she went missing November 26th. So you've got November, December, January, February. 3 months later, almost to the day, her body was found. It was found in a field that was 10 kilometers from her house, which is about 6 miles.
Not that far, but far enough.
Yeah. Far enough, yeah. Which means somebody picked her up from somewhere, because the gym is less than a half a mile. So when they found her, unfortunately, because 3 months had passed, and when someone is deceased and time passes, composition starts. So her body was partially decomposed. She was discovered by a model aircraft enthusiast who was out flying his radio-controlled plane. Young people, that's an old school drone. Just putting that out there.
That was what drones used to be.
Before there was drones, there was radio-controlled airplanes. So she had a dozen superficial knife lacerations to her throat and her back, but they weren't the cause of her death. The cause of her death was exposure due to loss of consciousness.
So like she was dumped somewhere and she was out in a vulnerable state. And...
yeah, somebody, I think, like maybe just attacked her and just kind of superficially hit her with the knife a few times, and then she was just stunned and outside in the cold. And police were able to get some really good DNA samples from her body. There was DNA samples on her body and in her undergarments and her leggings. So this is what they did. This is crazy. Well, first they had a funeral, and thousands of people attended Yara's funeral. Even the president of Italy spoke. I couldn't find exactly what was said by the president, because I thought, wow, the president of Italy spoke, but that's a big deal. Her death and her murder impacted this entire country. Jeez. So much so that what happens next is amazing. So they launched massive screenings. Well, Lieutenant Colonel Michele LaRusso, he was the lead investigator on the case. He said despite exposure to wind, rain, snow, the DNA traces were really excellent, and they were able to exclude saliva and semen. So that left a blood sample. He also stated that while Yara wasn't raped, she had been sexually assaulted. So police launched a massive screening of DNA banks. And then thousands of people voluntarily offer up their DNA to be tested. Over 15,000 people.
Holy cow.
Yeah. This is the most massive DNA collection that the world had seen. That's how much this impacted this country.
And so, like, my understanding of DNA, and as we have talked in the past about other cases, when that many people are volunteering their DNA, there's like a domino effect, because it could be a partial match to somebody, which means it could be a relative. So, like, it's not just those 15,000 people. It's everyone that shares their DNA markers.
Right. So hold on to that. Hold on to that thought.
I mean, that's huge. That's huge. Sorry.
Don't get ahead of me. All right. So they tested her school. They tested the people at her gym. And there even was a club, like a disco club, that was really close to her gym. And it was called La Sabe Mobile, which means quicksand.
Oh, wow. I've been told to avoid quicksand when I was a kid. So
different.
Yeah, but still same meaning.
Never mind. I'm not even going to ask. So they tested a bunch of guys that frequented this club. And it was, this club was actually near the field. I think I said by her gym, but it was near the field where her body was found. Okay. So of all of the men that were tested at this club, there was a young man named Damiano Girononi. His DNA, while not a match, was very similar to that of the killer. So the killer, who at this time had been nicknamed by the police Ignato Uno, which means the unknown one.
I mean, that just sounds super epic when it's in Italian.
Ignato Uno.
Like, that sounds like a bad guy from a comic book.
The unknown one. So, like I said, while he was not an exact match, it was similar, which meant there had to be some relation. So they start to investigate Damiano, and they find out that his mom, Aurora, her name is Aurora, she had actually worked for the Gambriacio family for several years. So this, of course, made them search even further into the family.
And for those of us that don't know, Gambriacio family is connected with...
That's the young girl that passed.
Oh, so it wasn't a crime family. This was her family. I just immediately assumed because it was an Italian name that they were the mob.
Stop being all...
Yeah, no, that's stereotyping. No, that was some racist stuff right there. Because not, like, just because you're an Italian family doesn't mean you're in the mob.
No. This is a sweet family. They lost their child.
And I'm assuming they're a mob family. That's on me.
So I'll say this. Damiano's mom had worked for Yara's family for several years. And they found out that Damiano's father was one of 11 children.
It's a lot of kids.
So they were like, Catholic. Okay, so
I bet they're Catholic.
Probably. I think a lot of people in Italy are Catholic. That's not racist.
I feel like that's just a fair guess. Yeah.
So they felt like, okay, so since this DNA is very similar, it has to be somewhere in his family line.
When you got 11 kids, I mean, that's a big family line. That's a family lineup.
Yes. So they go through Damiano's family and they figure out that they go through each of these children and they figure out that he has an uncle named Giuseppe. So now they feel like they're on the right track. Somehow they take this DNA and they've linked it to Giuseppe. So now they feel like they've got a real connection, a real link.
A possibility. Yeah. Like killer. A suspect.
Right. But let me tell you how they found Giuseppe. Giuseppe, they went to Giuseppe's house looking to speak to Giuseppe and they found his widow.
Oh, so Giuseppe dead.
Well, let me back up. I think I kind of just spoiled it. But yes, Giuseppe is dead. So they they were looking for a way to kind of get Giuseppe's DNA, and his widow pulled out a box of papers, and in this box of papers there was a paper driver's license with a Marco de Bola, which means a postage stamp
nice.
on it. So they were able to test this postage stamp and connect the DNA, and the DNA was a match. But problem, yes, not only was Giuseppe dead, he had been dead for 11 years.
So, unless he is a zombie, and this story takes a very unique turn, it wasn't Giuseppe.
It was not Giuseppe. So now they've got to track it through Giuseppe's line. Giuseppe and his wife had 3 children. All of his children were tested and immediately ruled out because their DNA did not match. So that means
Giuseppe probably had another kid.
Giuseppe was doing a little flirty, more than flirty.
Giuseppe was stepping out.
Yes, Giuseppe was completely stepping out. So they figured, okay, he's got to have some more kids. Investigators actually talked to one of his coworkers who said he was definitely a ladies' man. So it was his colleague. His name was Vincenzo Bigoni. And he's like, yeah, he's a ladies' man. And lots of young women. Giuseppe was a bus driver. And he's like, yeah, lots of young women traveled on his bus to and from work. One at least, he got into trouble. Hint, hint, wink, wink. More proof of another child out there somewhere. So they're taking this DNA from this stamp, but reps for Yara's family and investigators say, you know what, we need a little more. It's kind of insufficient for our means. It was enough to check some boxes, but they needed more. So they ended up exhuming Giuseppe's body in 2013, and samples were taken from one of his femurs.
So just to recap, they dug Giuseppe out of the grave to test his femur to make sure that the DNA matched. Dang.
Yes. Now,
so Italy has a lot of different rules than the U.S.
Oh, yeah. Way more. But you also have to remember when it comes to DNA, they're only getting one side of the DNA from Giuseppe. So they knew it wasn't a match because they had Giuseppe's wife's DNA. You know, of course, they obviously had to test her to test the children to see if it was a match. It was not. So they've exhumed Giuseppe. They've taken samples from one of his femurs. So now what they have to do is identify all the women that Giuseppe has come in contact with and could have possibly been intimate with.
This is a very awkward time for Giuseppe's family.
Yes.
I mean, obviously
now,
worth it.
Imagine.
But wow, that's just a different experience.
Well, his wife had no clue that Giuseppe even had another child. She had no clue Giuseppe had stepped out on her. So not only are you finding out that your husband's DNA is linked to a murder, now you've got to find out he was cheating on you and had a kid or 2 or 3 or 5 or however, you know?
And you can't even slap him because he's dead.
Unless you go slap the exhumed body, which that's a whole
I just don't feel like that's not going to be satisfying. I don't feel like that's satisfying. I mean, I've never slapped a corpse. Hope I never do.
So, since Giuseppe's wife or his widow had no idea that he'd had an affair or even had other children, this is why they had to kind of make a profile of all the women he'd had ever come in contact with and could have possibly been intimate with. Now, remember, he was a bus driver, so he's coming in contact with a lot of women. Police identified 532 women that he had known and could have possibly gotten it on. Brown chicken, brown cow. So they tracked all of the women through DNA testing between 2012 and 2013. Then they tracked it all again in 2014. Esther Arzoufi, who's 67 years old. Esther is also married. Esther has been married since she was 19. So for quite a while.
So that is a long time. That is a very successful term of marriage, 19 to 67.
That would also have to mean that Esther was also stepping out on her husband.
Oof.
Esther and her husband.
A lot of stepping out happening in
There's
Italy.
a lot of stepping out. Yeah.
Evidently, the bus is the place to be.
So, all right. So Esther had 3 children. She had a set of twins, a boy and a girl.
Mm-hmm.
And then she had a younger son. So she had her twins, Massimo Giuseppe. I'm going to let that sit there for a second.
Mm-hmm. That sounds familiar.
And Laura Letizia. And then she had a younger son named Fabio. So, of course, because Esther was a match, they had to test the children.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where Maury would come in and say to Esther's husband,
"You are not the father."
It turns out that the twins, Massimo Giuseppe and Laura Letizia, were actually Giuseppe's biological children. She named her kid. She is a sly SOB because she named her kid after her lover and her husband didn't even know.
Well, I mean, like, I don't know the top 50 baby names in Italy in 2013 or
okay, but you were sleeping with a guy named Giuseppe. Are you going to name your kid Giuseppe, even if it is a common name? I don't care if it's like John.
No, but I feel like she did that because it was to let him know.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Even though she denies it. She says, no. That's impossible. I never had anything. She's like, I knew him, but we never were intimate. She's like, I don't know how to explain the DNA. 'Cause you slept with them. Come on. Who are you trying to fool? Seriously.
Yeah. I mean, that's bold when you name your kid after the guy you're having an affair with. Like, that's some, like, Days of Our Lives level stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish I knew the name of an Italian soap opera right now because I would insert that, but anyway, okay, so
we're talking about an Italian soap opera that just hasn't been recorded yet.
Yeah, that's true. That is so true. So we know Giuseppe or Massimo Giuseppe and Laura Letizia are biologically Giuseppe's children. The attacker,
both of them.
Yeah, because they're twins.
Oh, yeah, that's how twins work, Adam.
So
I took 2 years of science in high school, and then I became a theater major.
Still, you've had kids. I think you should know how twins work.
I don't know. I wasn't really paying attention.
All right. So we know because of the DNA that they collected, they excluded, remember, he said they excluded saliva and semen, which semen, hence it had to be a male. So we know it wasn't Laura. So now we have our prime suspect in Yara's death.
Massimo Giuseppe.
Now the question could be raised, well, if Giuseppe had these two, couldn't he have more illegitimate children? Yeah, it's possible. And he probably did, obviously. But the DNA comes from both parents. And remember, they tested Esther and her DNA matched the sample as well. She's not going to have, unless her and Giuseppe had some more kids that they're hiding, her DNA wouldn't match anybody else's. That's how they figured out that it has to be Massimo.
Mm-hmm. But did he have opportunity and motive?
Well, we're getting there. So Carlo Prevendiri, he's a forensic geneticist. He said that
one of my favorite forensic geneticists.
The odds of anyone else sharing the same genetic profile was one person in a billions of billions. So I'm going to have to go with
he's saying like
here.
This is the dude. But like as a scientist, he can't say like basically. He's never going to say 100% this is the dude. He's going to say like here's the statistical probability that this is the dude, and everyone else is like, well, that's a really big number, so this is the dude.
Yeah, basically. So Massimo is now 43 years old and has 3 children of his own. There is something about 3 kids. But anyway, so in 2004, in June of 2004, the police are already eyeing Massimo and they set up a DUI roadblock near his house. They flag his car down. He's in the car with his wife and 2 kids. They obviously know he's going to pass the breathalyzer, but that's not the point. They
get his
breathalyze
breath
him.
and his
He
saliva.
passes, but they have now
Mhm.
his DNA, and they can test his DNA. So his DNA is sent to the lab, and it's compared to that of the DNA that was found on Yara's body, and it was a perfect match. It showed 21 compatible markers. Now, 16 or 17 compatible markers is usually enough. It showed 21.
So
So on June,
so 16 or 17 is good. 21 is obviously way better. And forgive me for asking a minutia question, but like, what is the, in comparison, what's 100%? Is like 24, 28?
I mean, if 16 or 17 is close enough, I'm guessing 21 is, I don't know what 100 would be.
I mean, that feels like it's got to be closer to 100% than it is to 0.
Oh, well, yeah, if 16 or 17 is enough, 21 is freaking, excuse me, Mom, that's a hell
Sorry,
of a
Mom.
lot. Sorry, Mom. All right, so June 16th of 2014, Massimo is arrested close to a site close to his job. He swears up and down he's innocent. He says, I don't have any idea how my DNA made its way onto her underwear and leggings. Here's the thing. The DNA was so specific that it even revealed that the killer had blue eyes. Guess who's got blue eyes? Massimo Giuseppe Bassotti. Yeah. So I'm thinking that this is a family full of liars, because you got the mom denying she had an affair. You got the son denying that he even knew the girl, or he can't explain how his DNA got on the body.
Dad
so
who didn't admit that he had the kids.
Right. Well, I mean, it's not that he didn't admit. I guess nobody ever asked him. And
he
just never.
He never fully disclosed.
Hey, omission. Nobody asked.
Hey, there are sins of commission and sins of omission. This was a sin of omission.
All right. Okay. So now the question is, what was the motive? We don't know, but here's what I'm thinking. Okay. So 2 men, after Massimo was arrested, 2 men came forward to the magistrates to say they had affairs with Massimo's wife. My personal theory.
Whoa. So
Massimo finds out that his wife's cheating on him. He's pissed off. He's driving around. Maybe he stumbles upon Yara, probably, flirts with her or whatever. Maybe he even offers her a ride, does something to her, realizes she's 13 years old, and kills her.
I mean, that realization should have happened a hell of a lot earlier. Sorry, Mom.
You would think, but maybe to her, I don't know. I'm not.
No, not at all. I mean, it's a plausible scenario.
Maybe he thought she looked older, or maybe he didn't care. Yeah. I don't know, but that's just my theory. I feel like he was pissed off because he found out his wife was cheating on him. He went out to go take out his frustrations on someone, found out this girl was underage.
And I mean, if we take a slight step back here, the irony of Massimo, the child of infidelity, being angry that his wife was potentially committing infidelity.
Yeah, but he didn't know.
I know he didn't, but I'm just like, from a 50,000 foot view, man, that's ironic.
Yeah, that's true. Massimo last used his phone around 5:45 the night that Yara was murdered. She went missing sometime around 6. His last call was to his brother, who happens to be a plumber. Plumbers have vans, I'm just saying, to discard bodies, but whatever. His last call
not
was
hating
to his
on
brother.
All plumbers everywhere.
And then no. But his last call was to his brother. About 5:45, and then his phone was completely turned off until the next morning at 7:44 a.m. Why turn your phone off? Who turns their phone off these days? Even in 2014, well, it would have been 2010, but nobody turned their phone off.
I mean,
really.
My phone is only off if I forget to charge it.
Right. Also, there was a white Iveco truck that was spotted on security cameras at a Shell station around 6 p.m. Massimo also had a white Iveco truck. The truck was spotted again 10 minutes later on cameras at the Banco Credito by Yara's house. Now, Massimo's attorney says, oh, that's because his brother lived near the area. And remember, he called his brother, whatever. And they're saying he just drove back streets to avoid traffic. No, I think he called his brother as an alibi, and he was passing Yara's house because he was picking her up. But, whatever. That's just my theory. Maria Comey is Massimo's wife, and she said in an interview that she thought that her husband was innocent. She's like, I've never had suspicions about him. We always ate dinner together at 7:30 and at the latest 8 p.m. And he was always there, and he was there that night. You remember 4 years ago exactly when and where your husband was on a specific day? Like, I can't remember where I was 3 days ago. You remember where your husband was 4 years ago?
I mean, maybe she's somebody who is very good with details. I mean,
maybe
90% of
so.
eyewitnesses in court cases tend to be incorrect, but maybe she's the 10%.
Yeah, whatever. She knows it. She knows her husband. She knows that her husband killed this little girl, but whatever. And I'm not alone thinking that, because on July 1st of 2006, Massimo Giuseppe Bassotti was sentenced to life in prison by the Corte de Assisi of Bergamo. And then he appealed it. And in July of 2017, the Corte de Assisi de Appello de Brescia upheld the verdict. So Massimo is spending life in prison. There is one other possible suspect, but I mean, there's an instructor at the gym. Her name's Silva Brenna, was the focus of Bassotti's defense, because her blood was actually found on the sleeves of Yara's jacket. It was identified, of course, by, DNA.
Because that's like the number one detective in the world right now is Mr. DNA.
Right? On the night of Yara's appearance, Silva's father said she cried all night with no explanation. And when she was asked about it, she said she couldn't remember anything. She couldn't explain why she was crying. And she also couldn't explain why she and her brother sent text messages right about the time of Yara's disappearance. And then those messages were almost immediately deleted. But the messages before and after were not deleted.
Reasonable doubt.
I'm not saying that I feel like Massimo is innocent. I feel like it could be a possibility that Silva may have had a part in it. Maybe Silva and Massimo work together. We don't know. But I still think Massimo is 100% guilty.
I was writing this horrible story, it makes more sense that Massimo was having an affair with the teacher and the kid walked in on it and the kid was killed because of that, because they didn't want it to get out.
That's a good idea. That's a good theory. Or maybe she was, someone who trafficked children. I mean, unfortunately, that is a big reality.
It's becoming more and more in the news lately as well.
Exactly. So some geneticists, even though they say there's no doubt of his DNA on Yara's body, and no doubt that he's Giuseppe's son, they say it doesn't make him a murderer for sure. I think you're just trying to cover your bases.
Well,
buddy.
I mean,
he did it.
The nature of as we mentioned earlier, nature of a scientist is they're never going to say definitively this way or the other, because they know that there's always a percentage for error. But that's the difference between a scientist and a demagogue, who will always say this is 100% one thing, whereas a scientist will say signs point to this, because they know that nothing is 100% ever.
Yeah. So the moral of the story, or I shouldn't say the moral, the end of the story is it is solved. Massimo in jail for the rest of his natural life, which is where he should be. Yeah.
I do like a solved one because I might sleep a little bit tonight. I'm not going to worry about where that one French dude put all his stuff when he killed his entire family, because I'm still worried about that.
And I checked on that. There is nothing on Xavier. There is nothing on Eric's bar. So those are still unsolved.
Okay, at least we have a solved one, so I can sleep tonight. Thank you for giving me one less thing to worry about.
That's what I'm here for, to help you out. All right, so now you're feeling good because we're solved. So What do you have for us this week?
So we have, for my side, one of my favorite 80s TV shows. And I know I've got a lot of favorite 80s TV shows, but 80s TV is when I understood media existed. I was born in 1981. So from 1981 until about 1984, I probably don't remember anything. But from 84 through 90, it kind of defined how I understood heroes and TV shows and things that I enjoy as a consumer of pop culture.
I'm going to stop you because you love Condor Man, and that was 81. So
right, but I didn't see that.
obviously
I didn't see that until at least 84.
love.
I mean, because like there's like we talked a lot about science today, and there's no scientific way that my brain remembers what I saw when I was 1 years old, or 1 year old, not 1 years old, because that's bad grammar. But one show that I absolutely remember watching, and there's a lot of shows from the 80s that I remember watching, like Knight Rider, for instance, Michael Knight and his talking car kit. That show I remember from when I was living in Missouri for one summer, when it had to be 85, 86, maybe 87, but I wanted a big wheel so badly. So not everyone like remembers big wheels. They were these trikes, and they had a big wheel in the front, and they had two little wheels in the back. And
Hence
sometimes
the name Big Wheel.
Big wheel, yeah. And it was like the coolest thing. It was like your bike before a bike. And I wanted a Knight Rider big wheel so badly. And of course, they were sold out. So I ended up with the obvious next best thing, which was a giant Smurf big wheel with like a Smurf face on the front. And let's be honest, like if you were a kid who wanted to be like Michael Knight and saving people and riding up in the Knight Rider big wheel, and now you're rolling up in a Smurf big wheel, it's a little bit of a different feeling. I love that big wheel. Still do to this day. But it was a bit of a change for me. And I always wanted to be the hero. And granted, Smurfs are heroes in their own right, just like Care Bears and everything. Like, that's a different type of hero. And
They beat Gargamel every week.
yes, they did. And usually without violence. So probably should have been a bigger hero. I mean, also the Care Bears, their entire power was passive aggressive. It was it was the Care Bear stare. It was literally just, we're going to look at you with feelings of goodwill and you're going to change your mind. And quite frankly, that is some badass stuff. But as a 5-year-old, I thought it was way cooler to like blow stuff up and run around. In hindsight, probably
and to talk into a watch and have a car drive up. Come on.
Or, I mean, so like when I think about my 80s heroes, early 80s TV show heroes, you've got Michael Knight from Knight Rider. You've got the A-Team. You've got Jessica Fletcher from Murder, She Wrote, because she might be number one. I still watch murder mysteries to this day, and I would honestly, if I could pick, like if I won the lottery tomorrow and I could start my own theater and just do one style of show for the rest of my life, I would do British murder mysteries every single day. It would be like Agatha Christie, like 10 Little Indians, and then there was one, it would be Blythe Spirit, which is murder mystery over and over. But also part of that Mount Rushmore, if you will, of 80s heroes was Remington Steele, which totally, like, I've had conversations with my therapist about Remington Steele and how about, like, that was confusing for me. But there was also a show called The Fall Guy, starring Lee Majors. And I remember this show. I remember watching this show with my parents, but then I looked it up and it ran from 1981 to 1986. And it's very unlikely that I remember it in its heyday because I was 1 to 5. So we must have watched it as a like syndicated show. But I absolutely loved this show. And there have been so many 80s shows that have been remade into movies in the last 20 years. I mean, everything from, you've got like Mission Impossible got remade, but that was a little bit earlier. You've got the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they got remade a dozen times. We've had, why am I blanking on? Oh, the A-Team, which actually the A-Team movie was really good, and no one gave it any credit, but it was very good. And the Fall Guy has never gotten remade. And I don't understand why, because quite frankly, it would be the easiest one to remake. So Lee Majors, who got his start, or his most like famous role, was being the $6 Million Man. He was a Cybertronic, like he was a army officer who like turned into a cyborg and he became a superhero basically, and it ran for years and years. He became
And the Bionic Woman.
Yeah, and the Bionic Woman was a spin-off of that. The actor Lee Majors married Farrah Fawcett, who was of Charlie's Angels. They were like this power couple in Hollywood. And then all of a sudden, he had a contract dispute with the studio because he wanted to have the Majors Fawcett production company as an executive producer on the show. And the studio didn't want to give him that much power. So they basically said, well, we're not going to do that. They told the press the fight was about money and that Majors was asking for too much money. And then the next season, they didn't get as good ratings, and suddenly they got canceled. So a couple years later, the same guy that he worked with on that series, the $6 Million Man, was starting a new pilot series called Fall Guy. And so Fall Guy played into every single one of Lee Majors' strengths. He was this natural sort of good-looking guy, but not like off-putting good-looking. Like you didn't want to punch him. Like you kind of wanted to hang around him, but like he wanted to be his best friend.
Right.
And like he was athletic. And everyone believed the athleticism because I'd seen it in the $6 Million Man.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea was for Fall Guy that you've got this guy who is sort of the forgotten person in Hollywood, and it's the stuntman, the guy who does all the hard stuff and doesn't get any of the accolades. And this trope we have seen replayed recently in Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
And Apple, not to completely steal your thunder.
No, go.
Apple on TikTok recently did like an 8.5, 9-minute short called The Stuntman. And that's kind of the premise of how the stuntman does all this stuff, but kind of never really gets the girl.
Yes. And to play with that theme completely, not only did Lee Majors take this role on for this pilot TV shows where it's a stuntman, but he works as a stuntman and sometimes he can't pay the rent. He's not making enough as a stuntman, so he also works as a bounty hunter. And so in every episode, he would, usually at the beginning of the episode, he's on set and he performs a stunt on a movie set, and then he has to go chase somebody, and then later in the episode has to perform that stunt in real life to catch the bad guy. It was a very sledgehammer storytelling idea, but it worked so well when I was a under 10 kid who was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. Every single time. But not only did Lee Majors decide that this was a good plot point, he said, you know what? I'm going to go full in. And he recorded the theme song to his own show.
He did.
Which is, quite frankly, one of the more baller moves ever.
Well, I'm not the kind to kiss and tell, but I've been seen with fire up. I've never been with anything less than a 9. So fine, I might fall from a tall building, I might roll a brand new car, 'cause I'm the unknown stuntman that made Redford such a star.
Like, we've seen Will Smith do it for Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. You've seen Walker, Texas Ranger. So what's his name?
Chuck Norris.
Chuck Norris, yes. In the eyes of a ranger, the unsuspecting stranger had better know the truth of wrong from right. He actually sang the theme song to his own show. So, like, there is a very short list of Hollywood badasses who have sang the theme song to their own show. So, Will Smith in Fresh Prince, Chuck Norris in Walker, Texas Ranger, Kelsey Grammer in Frasier.
Yes.
Yeah. And Lee Majors in The Fall Guy. So
What did he say? Scrambled eggs.
Yeah. Highly underrated show. Again, Isaac, I know I'm going to say it for the 30th time. We could do an entire show on Frasier. My friend Isaac has listened to the show many times and says, dude, you got to stop talking about the shows you're not going to do.
He told you should ring a bell?
Yeah.
Oh, ring.
Yeah. No, he said you should have a bell whenever I say we should do that. You could just ring the bell and I'd be like, ah! Kind of like when I say minutia things and you're like, no minutia, Adam. So between your mom and Isaac, we have two people who are already executive producers on the show by accident.
Thank you, Isaac.
Which is great. I love that. So Fall Guy runs for 5 years. And I think one of the most interesting points is after $6 Million Man, Lee Majors is a huge star. And he's married to Farrah Fawcett, who is in Charlie's Angels and has probably the best-selling poster of all time. Her with the hair and the red swimsuit, and like it was on every teenage boy's wall from in the 70s. They're married, and then they have this messy divorce, and it gets like Farrah Fawcett went as Farrah Fawcett Majors for like years, and then all of a sudden she drops Majors, and it's very awkward. But then in the first season, in one of the sort of weird, we're all trying to make this work moments, they've had this huge bad breakup, publicly known, and be like it's in the tabloids. So she shows up in the first season of The Fall Guy as a cameo, as a way to be like, no, we're okay. We're just both moving on with our lives. And you're like, wow, I don't think anyone believed that. But they at least tried. It was right. It was like the 70s or like early 80s equivalent of like, hey, look, we're all going to the farmer's market with the kids. We're cool. So it's funny to see that like no matter the decade, that stuff was still happening. So you got Fall Guy. They tried. They did. And for 5 years, Fall Guy is this super easy to like, you could drop in on any episode. It was not like there was a overarching story. It's the story of a stuntman with two of his buddies who are also stuntmen. One of them's his like, nephew who's sort of a dolt who usually messes things up. And then of course there was almost a Farrah Fawcett character, like the blonde stunt lady who was the blonde bombshell. And every week they do some stunts. They solve a missing like bounty hunter case, and then they come back and do some more stunts. And it was super well contained, and you could watch it. You didn't have to think about it. It wasn't this question of like, did I miss an episode so I like have to watch the entire season again? It was just episodic, and it was fun.
Yeah, because then you couldn't like binge. You had to wait until the summer for reruns.
Yeah, and then hope you caught
the stuff. The show. Yeah, or hopefully somebody VHS taped it.
Well, and like this series was not released on DVD until 2007. So 22 years after it ended, it was the first time it was on DVD. And there were like hardly any VHS options. So like if you didn't watch it in the moment, you never got to see it. And it is one of my favorite characters. Like Colt Seavers, who played by Lee Majors, is one of my favorite characters. And in 2013, in this time of all these reboots, there was a glimmer of hope that maybe Fall Guy was going to get a reboot. And it was, and I always say his name incorrectly, MCG, who did like the Charlie's Angels movie. Mm-hmm. Mick G. I'm not sure how he pronounces his name.
Mick G.
Mick G. He and The Rock were attached in 2013 to take the Fall Guy script and idea and turn it into a movie. And quite frankly, I don't know if there's a better person who could have done that. If you say, oh, you've got a Hollywood stuntman who then turns into a bounty hunter played by The Rock. That's believable. Like, I would watch that movie.
Okay, back in 2013, before he was in every single movie, absolutely.
Yeah.
But now you're kind of like, meh.
Well, yeah, now he's buying football leagues and he's doing like 4 Fast and the Furious movies a year. So
8 Jumanjis. He's got tequila. He's got to worry about.
To be fair, the Jumanji movies are good.
Oh yeah, they are.
I like those a lot. I like the old one. I like the new ones. I can watch some Jumanji. But if there's any hope of somebody redoing this, and actually, so hold up, we go back to a series that you and I both watched. Lee Majors actually showed up on it as and this was probably the spiritual like successor to the Fall Guy, but it was a series called Hard Target. Do you remember Hard Target? You remember Hard Target?
I don't remember Hard Target. Wait a minute. I've got to look this up because I don't remember Hard Target.
We've talked about Hard Target. It was 2010, 2011. It was this guy who ended up like he was a former special agent and ended up becoming like a bodyguard.
I can't even find it on IMDb. Hard Target or Heart?
No, I'm probably using the wrong words. Hold on. I think it's Hard Target. Nope, it's not Hard Target. Also, in the series of Fall Guy, he always had this big GMC truck. And my grandfather worked for GMC for 30 years and retired. So like I love GMC, and I actually have to this day the Matchbox car of the truck that he would drive around, and the truck itself got broken up so many times that they had to like build an entire new type of truck. Like it was like a stunt truck only because it would continue. It was like the Dukes of Hazzard car. Like they would do a stunt and it would just get destroyed and they'd be like, oh, we need a new truck. So I still have that. I know you know the show. We've talked about the show way back when. Human Target.
Oh, Human Target is a good show.
Yeah, see, Human Target. That's what I was trying to remember. And I said Hard Target because, let's be honest, I got Jean-Claude Van Damme on the brain.
Apparently.
But Human Target. So he shows up in an episode as the mentor of the guy, Mark Valley. And that show had so many good people. I mean, Chi McBride was in it. Jackie Earl Haley. Well, we could do a whole show on his career.
Ding,
Sorry,
ding,
Isaac. Ding, ding, ding. But that was very similar in style to The Fall Guy. So The Fall Guy never got a reboot. It didn't get the movie with The Rock. But if you love the old series and you want to watch it, it's on Amazon Prime. But if you wanted something a little bit newer that was very similar, go watch Hard Target. Human Target.
Human Target.
But watch Hard Target too, because Jean-Claude Van Damme is great. But Human Target is basically...
He's not a stuntman, but hey, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, Jean-Claude Van Damme is basically a stuntman of life. So, in summation, The Fall Guy was great. I had the Matchbox car. He's on my Mount Rushmore of 80s heroes. Go watch the series on Amazon Prime. And if you can't do that, watch Human Target, which is basically the same thing, but just a little bit newer.
And let's definitely should have had way more seasons than
yes, it was really good. And also, let's hope The Rock decides to make a Fall Guy movie, because that would be great.
But he's kind of busy.
Well, he's really busy.
Because not only does he have the football leagues, he's got the TV shows.
He got the TV show, like the Titans. He's like doing a bunch of movies. And like, also, taking a step back, we talked about like the fact that Farrah Fawcett and Lee Majors like could try to make it look like everything is good in their show. The Rock just bought a football league with his ex-wife.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure I would buy like dinner with my ex-wife. We'd probably just split it, and that would be better. And the fact that this guy is buying it, spending $15 million to buy a league that they're going to run together. I mean, as someone who has a lot of failed relationships, that is encouraging. Because
Can I just say that whole relationship, though, is really pretty funny because he was married to Danny Garcia.
Yeah.
And then Danny Garcia, basically, The Rock's new wife or girlfriend. I don't believe they're married currently. They have a bunch of children together, but they're not married. And then Danny's new husband, they were previously married.
Oh, wow. So it was just sort of a like,
It was kind of like a wife swap.
yeah. Wow. I mean, whatever works for you, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it
Yeah.
seems like they're doing very well. I mean, I think it's very interesting they bought the XFL. And quite frankly, if they were going to relaunch the XFL and they were going to really make a difference, what they should do, and I know this isn't a sports podcast, but what they should do is relaunch it right now and ask all these college kids that can't play because their colleges won't play football to sign a 3-month contract and play 6 games in a bubble for them.
But doesn't that mess with their eligibility?
The NFL is still going to take the best players. So,
No,
like,
I mean for school.
no,
if,
but the kids that like this would be their last year in college.
oh yeah.
Because like the Gophers' best wide receiver, who is an amazing athlete, even before all this happened, said, "I'm not playing college football this year. I'm just going to work out because I'm going to be a first-round draft pick, whether I do that or not. Why risk it?" The only like these kids have to stay in school for 3 years because of some arcane rule that the NFL established, so it would help college football. But now college football is not happening. So you've got all these kids that just went to college to play football and can't play football. If The Rock said, hey, the XFL is going to go in a bubble in a very secluded environment, we're going to do it safe, and any kid who is draft eligible can come play for our teams,
That might really work.
I mean, ESPN, Fox, all these, they're not going to have any football games to show.
Right.
So if they just said, like, everybody come to, middle of nowhere, Texas, and like do it old school, like make it seem like high school football, Texas, like just like pick a small town in Texas, have them play on like the high school football field. They all stay in like the local Days Inn, and like you just quarantine that entire city. That they will make that $15 back immediately.
So we see bubbles work because look at NHL,
Yeah,
look
NHL,
at
NBA,
the NBA, and the NFL. The teams that are doing it properly, like the Broncos. I love that they do the sanitizing mist before and after practice.
yeah.
Practice.
I mean, New Orleans is actually like the Saints are taking, and they've rented out an entire hotel, and they are encouraging all of their players through training camp and through the season to stay there as much as possible. And they like just run the hotel.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like college could have been, except without all the other students.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how you do. Like, I understand why college football has canceled. Like, a lot of conferences have canceled. Like, I don't know how you do that. But there is an opening for a league like the XFL to step in and say, hey, all draft eligible kids, you want to play football this fall so people can get tape on you and you don't sit around not getting drafted. Come play with us and do a short season, because who knows if the NFL is going to happen.
Right.
Because they're still trying to do it on a large scale. But if the XFL said we're doing a bubble, people will be throwing money their way.
Well, I hope The Rock hears your suggestion.
Well, I assume he's a listener.
Of course he is.
I mean, he's got so much else going on during the day. I'm sure he listens to multiple podcasts. I mean, I'm sure he's a fan of true crime. Come on. He's a true crime fan. You know that. I just hope he keeps listening past the break.
He's a crime nut, just like everybody else. And he's like, I need my crime fix. So, all right.
So we got to do the remix.
Do we?
I really like it. I'm sorry I'm forcing it. I know.
Oh, and you know what? If you are a crime nut, how about this? Added something on the website. It's web exclusive stuff. You can only get it on the website, asidebsidepodcast.com. It's called Nuggets for Crime Nuts. And it's just, you're kind of like missing the true crime stories. You're like, I need my crime fix. Well, it's website exclusive stories. The only way you're going to get them is to come onto our website, asidebsidepodcast.com.
It's the exact thing like when you're stuck at work and you're like, I have had a crap Tuesday and I need a little bit of an escape.
Uh-huh.
This is your escape.
Exactly. So head on over to the website. Also, wear your mask. And if you have missed Adam's mask of the day, we have posted those on our Facebook page. We've got them on our Instagram. You can follow us on Instagram. You can follow us on Facebook.
And y'all, that's not even like a fifth of my masks. Like there are more coming.
Shoo. That was 5 of them right there.
Yeah. I got at least 30.
Oh, wow. You're
Yeah.
prepared.
Yeah. No, I'm real scared. In the past, like this whole paranoia thing was like a character detriment. Now it's like a positive.
It's working out for you.
Thank you, pandemic.
All right. So real quick, your thoughts on the case. Real quick. Quick, Adam.
I'm just glad that somebody got caught for once, because now I don't have to go to sleep and worry about when we're going to catch this guy. I do think it's very interesting that his name was Massimo, because that was also the guy that married Lori. Well, his first name was Massimo.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was also the guy that married Lori Loughlin, who tried to get their kids into college and now also in jail. So maybe don't name your kids Massimo.
Or Giuseppe.
Yeah.
Or don't cheat on your spouse.
This is an important remembrance.
That might be the biggest thing from this all. Don't cheat on your spouse, because then you won't have a kid that will be linked back to a postage stamp.
Right. And if you do cheat on your spouse, like, don't name your kid after the person you cheated on with.
Seriously.
Like, that's really weird.
Like, she could not have not thought of this, because we all know. We know you slept with him. We know you did the deed.
Yeah.
And then you got pregnant, and then you named your kid after him.
Like, I mean, that's just, it's sort of a, like, very, like, sort of like, I'm just going to do this and see what happens move.
It's ballsy.
And if the kid hadn't gone on and killed somebody, evidently the husband never knew.
Right. If he had not done what he did, nobody would have ever known the family secret.
Do you
what a
think,
way
like,
to find out the family secret.
Every time the dad was like, Massimo Giuseppe, come over here. Like, in her brain, she was like, you're not his real dad.
I hate you.
Yeah. That's what she probably was thinking, too.
Oh my gosh. All right. So it's been another episode of A-Side, B-Side podcast. Thanks, Adam.
Love you, Brooke.
Love you.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the A-Side, B-Side podcast. If you enjoyed it, please give us 5 stars on Apple and join us again next Friday.